Oh, we are full intro. Good morning, good evening, and absolute welcome to have you here, astrology and spiritual enthusiasts. Just going to take a few minutes to get everybody on live, and while notifications are going on, we are live on Facebook, we are live on LinkedIn, and we are live on YouTube. So I really hope that from wherever you are following us, we are looking forward to some amazing, great questions. If you just want to lurk in the background and absorb all the information that you are going to get from this live, because there's going to be a lot of information, then just please feel free to do so, and just reach out to myself, reach out to Glen and to myself later on. So we are happy to answer any questions that you've got. So what a delight to have you on there. And when I first got to know you in hypnotherapy, my light bulbs were just ping, 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 ping going out. So just a few minutes just to the audience to introduce what you've been involved with and where you're focusing currently right now. And then we're going to dive deep in.
Okay, cool. So yeah, I'm Glen Mitchell. I am the CEO and head teacher at the Freedom Formula Hypnotherapy Academy. And hypnotherapy is a huge passion of mine. I have two huge passions which go hand in hand, which is hypnotherapy and helping people with their mental and emotional well-being. And
mental health and well-being.
Very closely, yeah. And so I was very excited when you obviously invited me to come and talk, because, well, I love everything that you do, and I'm very excited to get to know your audience a little bit. Spread the word as well, because hypnotherapy is one of those things that I feel is underrepresented in the world. It's put in the sort of back row, and it's that dirty little secret of, I've tried everything else, so I better go try this hypnotherapy thing. So I want to get it out into people's consciousness. It's not the last resort, it's the first.
Absolutely agree with you. You know, it's interesting when you are exploring the spiritual realm, and I noticed that about what's happening with my screen here? Come on. Yeah, there it is. And I noticed that with astrology as well, that mainstream media, in a way, it's very much distorting a lot of things, and it's kind of giving quite a bit of dent in the reputation to spiritual pseudoscience. Let's just use the word as that. But it's not. It really is not. And some serious professionals who are dedicating years of studying to go into these subjects, and really with the purpose of being there for people who are looking for answers, who want to find their path, who are kind of, and like you said as well, that they are planning, that they are kind of searching for different avenues of what's the best possible way of dealing with their issues. And mental health is just such a huge, absolute vast topic. And I'm really happy that actually on LinkedIn, because in terms of social media, how you can basically get across to big audiences in the most transparent way. And I'm really happy that LinkedIn itself is really approached this issue and embracing this issue, and in a much in a way of workplace. And now it's not a taboo. It doesn't come across as some kind of a magic voodoo black magic sort of thing.
There was something that you said there as well that I think it's an absolutely brilliant point to make, and one that over the coming sort of years is going to really sort of change. And that is, like, you mentioned that people call things like astrology, hypnotherapy, and all of these other spiritual ways of dealing with stuff. People call that pseudoscience. Now, what's interesting, hypnotherapy is a great study into this because for literally hundreds of years, it was considered pseudoscience, nonsense, and all of these things. But in recent years, lots of neuroscience research is starting to catch up with what a lot of hypnotherapists either thought or knew. And it's showing that there's a pure scientific basis for this thing that was always kind of rubbish in the scientific community. And that's one of the things that always gets me is like, why do things have to be separate? Why do scientific and spiritual have to be separate? I guarantee the two can always meet. They can always find a basis to work hand in hand.
Absolutely. And I'm resonating on that one as well, because I'm looking at astronomy, always astronomy. I don't want to be an astronomer. It's not something that I want to work with, physics and calculations, and it's more about that how it relates to us, that kind of spiritual input. And so going back to hypnotherapy, because it's going to be absolutely fascinating. What you are seeing right now currently of, you've got and I'm so humbly privileged to be part of your community and your group on Facebook, and it's one of the most dynamically growing group that I've encountered. So there's a lot of interest in there. What's resonating with people currently right now? Why are they looking at hypnotherapy?
So I think it's a combination of factors. Now, one of them, and this is something that I hear a lot from people that contact me, one of them is that people are looking for some sort of help. They're looking for something, and there's like nothing there. When they look, they're almost looking into a void. And I always remember just a phone call. It was just my phone went. It was a mobile phone number. I answered it, and the person on the other end was basically saying, "Look, I'm desperate. I need some help." And so when obviously we calmed the situation down about, we got chatting, and they told me like how they'd been feeling and what they would hope to get from any sort of therapy. And I said to them like, what made you choose hypnotherapy and what made you come looking at me? And they'd said they'd basically been to their doctor, been told, look, the waiting list is 18 months. You need to go and find your own alternative therapy. And when they typed the words alternative therapy into Google, mine was one of the first sites that popped up, which was the only reason. They just clicked on what they saw.
It means
But
that
it
your
said,
SEOs are really good as well. So if someone wants technical help with SEOs as well, I think you are the person to talk to.
and so what I think is resonating with people at the moment is they're looking for a way to like break out of wherever they're feeling trapped. And people quite often talk about what they call a mental health crisis that's going on. Now, I'm not a huge fan of terminology like that, just purely because I believe when you start naming things, you make them very real. And I just very quick aside, I actually tracked this once. I looked at cases of road rage in the 1990s in newspaper reports. And once the term road rage was common in newspapers, once it had been coined, it was being used often, cases went through the roof. It was almost like the name gives permission for it to exist, or the name makes it more real. And so when we talk about a mental health crisis, it concerns me then that everybody that's feeling down or low or just stuck, like they don't belong or whatever it is, they instantly go looking for what's my mental health problem, what's the issue here, when we don't necessarily need to go looking for a named issue. We just need to go looking for what helps us each individually. And I think one of the things as well that sort of makes what I'm doing online, like with Facebook group and stuff, resonate too, is one of the big aspects of mental health that is missed is the community aspect. And so having communities where we can talk about these things, we can talk about things like hypnotherapy, we can talk about the solution rather than just the problem, I think really opens people's eyes and opens their minds. And I think a lot of people really resonate with that idea right now.
Yes, the community. It's how I'm seeing it in a way is that, again, you find that comfortable place whereby you kind of break down these taboos, and it's kind of, the tribe, as I call it, the tribe, it just becomes bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and just really trying to break down these, these kind of, this is a pseudoscience, this is nonsense, this is not going to go anywhere, whatever. And it's quite amazing to see the ripple effect, because there are some, there are some testimonies. Maybe there is something that we can't really explain it from a rational perspective. And there's just so much stuff that we don't get, you don't understand. Maybe we are not meant to understand it either. So maybe it's better that we don't understand. And it's just a really organic, dynamic growth, and that's exactly what I'm seeing in your group. Without going into any kind of confidentialities or any kind of personal stuff. We are talking about mental healing here. People can have all sorts of issues. I mean, depression, bipolar issues, addictions, relationship problems, divorce, breakups, rocky marriages, relationships, issues with siblings, with family dynamics, loss, if there is a loss in the family, loss of job, loss of a relative, definitely, especially if it comes to a spouse or a parent, or loss of a child. Oh my God, I can't even imagine what sort of impact that has got on a person. There is just so much that can be discovered. So is there anything that kind of really comes to your mind that you're working with, that people are basically seeking out to, or they are just kind of looking for is that, what's the way of hypnotherapy is working? What is the main theme?
Well, the main theme is actually usually one of some level of self-loathing and self-blame. Pretty much every condition that you mentioned there seems to come with an element of that. People who are, addiction is something I see people for often, and everybody that I've seen with addiction is doing a huge amount of self-blaming, has a huge amount of self-loathing, and that actually keeps them trapped in the addiction. But also with loss, whether it's loss of a career, loss of a loved one, loss of a relationship, people always go into the place of guilt on that a lot of the time. And that's where a lot of people get stuck. Guilt's a normal stage to go through in grief, but a lot of people seem to get really trapped there, and they double down on it and on the feeling. It's such a big feeling, it like grasps hold of them. And like one thing I'm seeing, so I said addiction is one thing I'm seeing a lot of people for. Another thing I'm seeing a lot of people for at the moment is people that are coming out of relationships, often difficult relationships, or relationships that could be described. I say could be, because you don't ever get one side of the story, but could be described as emotionally abusive. And this theme of self-loathing and self-blame is just massive. And even when it comes to like what's almost seen as fairly standard mental health issues these days, like depression and anxiety, the amount of people that come to me that are either depressed or really anxious, and they might look quite successful to the outside world. And so the first thing they do is they say, who the hell am I to feel this way? Like, how self-indulgent am I to actually feel this anxious or feel this depressed when you look at my life and people would kill for my life? And so I think there's just a lot of like lack of understanding in terms of knowledge that's out there about these things. And so whenever people experience that pain, then they seem to go to that position of like, it's my fault, and this includes people that have been, again, I've had a lot of clients who have been confirmed victims of abuse in earlier life and things like that. And even then, there's a huge amount of self-blaming goes on. And so one of the key fundamentals in all of the work that I do with people, and it's one of the things that hypnosis is wonderful for, is allowing people to find that calm space within themselves to let their mind almost cool so
Mm.
that they can actually calmly work through whatever they need to and start to create a place of self-respect, self-love, and just self-initiated healing.
Mm. What I find really interesting and being guilty too. And by the way, I'm a huge fan of hypnotherapy. I worked with a hypnotherapist. Oh my goodness, when was that? It's around 2000, and as you work with the therapist as well, and then a lot of people who find this kind of method working, which I did. You go into more on a self hypnosis level and meditation, and it's kind of a journey. It really is a journey, but again, it really depends on the individual. Some who really need that firm, definite, like your presence, Glenn, that you are there, you are guiding them, and some people just want to venture out, after that they've got a little bit of knowledge and a little bit of guidance, because you are also providing a lot of insights and a lot of teachings about how it's actually done. So it really depends on the individual where he wants to or she wants to take it. But you mentioned something quite interesting here is that people are still at a point of whereby they say that I do have a problem, but because I wear a suit and tie and because I've got a really fancy profile on LinkedIn, and everybody thinks that I'm a hot shot and I'm earning millions of dollars a year, I must not speak about this, because if I do, or I must even not even say anything about anyone, because if I do, I'm going to ruin myself. I'm going to ruin my career. I'm going to everything. That's what kind of I worked in family office, been involved with the family office network, and when you come to do one-on-one conversations with people, and you establish relationships and friendships, and then closer friendships, because especially family office, it's a very close knit tight community, and relationships take a lot of time, and it's a very loyal community as well. So it's this kind of depth of relationships where people can feel actually comfortable to share. They do develop, and eventually they do share that there is an issue here, there is an issue there. But what is that kind of big kick or big thing that can kind of, if someone is actually kind of hiding in the cupboard, so to speak, and thinks that this might be something that he wants to explore, what would you advise them to do at that particular stage?
What a lot of people do. So this isn't so much advice as what's really common, but it works very well. What a lot of people do is they come for what they see as a safe issue. So they come to stop smoking. They come because they want to drink less. They
Mm,
come because they've got a presentation to do that they want to get really well in their head. Like all sorts of safe issues that people come for in the first place, low level things or seemingly low level things, so that they can come and actually experience the process. And what a lot of people do is when they realize that this process is safe, you're working with a professional therapist that's completely confidential. At that point, and it usually happens during their first session, we quite often, what people book in for, we never work on because we end up working on what they're really here for. But it's that idea of it almost gives people permission to explore something like this without having to worry if anybody's going to find out or worry if it somehow has a negative reflection on themselves. And so, if I was to offer advice to people that are feeling stuck and trapped and they're worried about reaching out, the one thing that I would say is when you do this, with whoever you're working with, you will be working with a professional and they have to adhere to professional standards. So it's 100% confidential. But also, almost every hypnotherapist that I've come across also offers like free consultations. And you can literally talk about anything in that consultation if you just want to get to know a bit more about what this is. And so
But who
You can
you're
talk
going to
about.
be, who you're going to be working with. You want to know that person is qualified and knows what they are talking about. You don't just start exploring all these really deep issues, with the first person that you come across. It makes sense.
And so, yeah, so I guess actually that you've really put that really succinctly. The first piece of advice I would have is have some conversations. Just conversations. Doesn't have to be anything else. Just
Mm,
conversation.
yeah, yeah. Just taking that first step. I love that saying is that the journey of 1,000 miles start with the very first step. I think it's just so brilliant. Yeah, first step is have a conversation.
Oftentimes as well, because we tend to be in this what I call bias for inaction. We're thinking about something. The longer it's been a problem, the more we're in our bias for inaction. And taking the smallest step can switch us to a bias for action, which means that once we take a first step, it's so much easier to take a second one. The first step, crossing that Rubicon, is by far the hardest part. Everything gets easier from there. So if the first step's scary, that's okay. To promise you, the second step is 10 times easier.
So from your personal experience, because I know this is very um, I always want to go down to, like, what's the biggest thing that you sorted out and things, and it's this is, I mean, this is very with working with mental health issues and with people. So if you want to share not about your practice but maybe about yourself a little bit, about maybe a technique, maybe overcoming something that you are really trying to do and overcome, or just share a little bit about your personal journey. And
Well,
I can
my
see
personal
your passion, your enthusiasm, and your vast amount of knowledge, and it must have taken you years to get to where you are right now at this point.
my personal journey is quite an interesting one because I started differently to most people in that I started to prove that hypnosis wasn't real. That's why I started training in this. So years back, I suffered with tremendous anxiety. Like, I remember there was periods in my life where I wouldn't leave my bedroom other than to use the toilet. I was just so anxious. And when I was at university, I entire months of my life were spent without going outside, and I thought I was quote going mad. I just thought there was something wrong with my brain. I was wired up wrong or something. And over time, I would learn more and more about these things. And as I sort of went into early adulthood, I was getting on with life, but I found this anxiety kept coming back, and it was punctuated with bouts of depression. And I remember one day I just thought, I need to do something. I need to get rid of this anxiety. Otherwise, it's going to just continue to take over my life, and I'm going to crash, as it were.
Spiral completely out of control. Yeah.
And yeah, that was exactly how I felt. Like I was going to spiral out of control. And so one of my biggest anxieties was fear of any form of confrontation. I was terrified of it. Raised voices, potential violence, these things scared me so badly since a very young age. Um, and it seemed to get worse as I got older rather than better. So, like any sensible person, I decided to join the prison service so I could get over this fear. I I can safely say I wouldn't recommend that path to most people. There's much more sensible ways to do this, and I'll share one in a minute. But as soon as I joined the prison service, it was kind of like, oh, I'm doing this for a living. I've left my old career in IT. I can't afford to fail. I'm about to get married, and so I had to make it work. So I was in a no lose situation in terms of I couldn't afford to lose, which is that works for me. Putting myself in that can't back out situation works for me. Doesn't work for everybody, but it worked for me. But I was still terrified. So I had to get over that. And so I learned neuro linguistic programming, NLP. And I studied that for years and years. So first, it helped me get over my fears working in a prison, which in turn completely eradicated my anxiety. Within about 6 months, anxiety was a thing of the past, and it has never really returned for me. Um, and I became a huge lover of NLP, a huge fan. I used it all the time in my own life. I used to use it when I had stressed colleagues. They would come and find me, and I'd take them through some NLP techniques, give them a mental refresh. They loved it. And I got a bit of a reputation that he's the guy you go to when you got some problems. He'll help you out. And I absolutely loved everything about it. And I had no plans to leave that career at that point either. But one day, I read that a lot of the techniques from NLP come from hypnosis. And I thought to myself, wow, that's nonsense because hypnosis isn't real. And I'd seen stage shows and stuff when I was younger. I just thought it was nonsense. So I
I know
decided
some.
because
I know. Excuse me. Some of the things when you see that on stages. Actually, I forgot to bring some water. Could you guys pass me some water, please? I can't really do it. When you see these people kind of just passing out on stage, and I was like, what is this going on? This is so. I totally get you.
that, yeah. So being the fairly arrogant person that I was back then, I was a fairly arrogant person back
Oh, you're making me cry
then. I thought to myself, I'm going to prove that hypnosis isn't real. I'm going to learn how to do it to prove that it isn't real. And so I did, and it turns out I was totally wrong. And I fell in love with it really, really quickly. And then I started using a lot of self hypnosis, and it made some massive transformations for me. It gave me the ability to focus my mind, which is something I've never had. Like I'm the typical 100 tabs open in your brain guy, and there's usually a soundtrack singing behind all of that. And I've never been able to change that. And with hypnosis, I found very quickly that I could quiet my own mental noise. And when I realized that that same thing I was experiencing, I can help other people experience, that's when I realized how powerful a therapeutic modality this was. Now, one thing that I was very lucky with was in the prison service, I got to work with people who were actually at their lowest in terms of I was called what's called an enhanced case manager. And it was my job to case manage people who were actively suicidal. And that came with a wealth of good mental health training and a great deal of experience of multidisciplinary cases and things like that. And so when I trained in hypnotherapy, when I became a hypnotherapist, I quickly found I started using that.
now.
And when I first started, I thought, yeah, I'll help a few people stop smoking. Maybe I'll help a few people cut down on the drink or whatever. And almost straight away, people were sort of coming to me and saying, I don't know if you can help, but I do feel suicidal, but I've been turned away everywhere else.
No.
And my first thought was, well, do you know what? I am trained to deal with people that are suicidal, and I also know where to refer you on to if I can't do this. So I'm going to try. And this is still the happiest moment that ever happened in my hypnotherapy career. It was a couple of years in, and a client who this was like the most difficult phone call I ever took. It was someone had been handed my business card, and they phoned me and said, I'm going to kill myself today. Now, I don't know who's on the other end of the phone. I don't know where in the country they are. I just know they phoned me and just said this. And so I just thought, well, I need to keep you talking so I can get some info out of you, because at least I can send an ambulance if I need to. And I said, okay, so why did you make this call? And they said, well, I thought I'd give it a sort of a last chance, if you like. And they told me, basically, they told me how they were going to do it. They told me how they had the means to do it, how they were going to do it. And I sort of said, like, why don't you just meet with me tomorrow? We ascertained we weren't geographically too far apart. So why don't you just meet with me tomorrow? I actually said, and if it doesn't work, you've only lost 24 hours, then you can try. Of course, I didn't mean that, but
I'm
it was
sorry, I
just a
should
case.
laugh at that because it's too serious. But yeah.
Yeah, and it's just a case of I want this person to actually meet with me, and so she met with me, and we talked, and she decided that she liked me, and she said at the end of our meeting, like, okay, I would like you to try and help me, and so we did. We embarked on a very good therapeutic relationship. And some months later, I just got a text message from her, and it just said, this morning's the first day I've woke up without any suicidal thoughts in 20 years. I
Wow.
can't tell you how much this means to me. And there have been other instances like that, but that was the first, so it meant the most. and it still means a lot. I feel emotional talking about it,
I can feel that.
because it still means a great deal now. Um, so yeah, my journey into hypnotherapy was slightly different in terms of I came from an arrogant point of view. I'm going to prove this is wrong. But then when I got to further in my career, I've been working as a hypnotherapist. I've got all of my mental health training from the prison. I realized that I could put these things together and I could give people really good training. And so I worked with an accrediting body. Basically got myself some students who were either people that I knew or former clients who had said, I wish I could do what you do. And I started a closed door hypnotherapy school and developed a syllabus, put it through the accrediting body. They were like, yep, this is perfect. Thank you very much. And it just made me sort of set on this mission. So my mission is basically, I want to bring hypnotherapy to the world. But one thing that I also find is hypnotherapy is completely unregulated, like completely unregulated, which means anybody can literally just pop online and say, hi, I'm a hypnotherapist. They don't even really need insurance, although I would never recommend working without it. But your chances of getting sued as a hypnotherapist are really low, because of it's legally classed as an alternative therapy, similar to aromatherapy. And so it's got the same legal standpoints. At least that's how it is here in the UK. That's how it actually is in a lot of countries across the world. So anybody can do this. And what I found is there are some really bad courses out there. Like you can do a £30 course on Udemy, which technically qualifies you as a hypnotherapist, and it's just reading a bunch of scripts. And so my mission is train people to be excellent therapists that also use hypnosis. And so it's be therapeutically skilled first, be a hypnotist second, and that's kind of the mission right there, to improve mental and emotional health by being amazing therapists, and also hypnosis happens to be the modality that we use. So I think I totally tangented from your question there, but I hope that's
Absolutely,
okay.
fully in depth. It's the training, the teaching is definitely that's you know, just from my personal experience, because you find it is just so beneficial, and you want to, well, you I wanted to know more of the
Yeah.
elements of, what is it that I can do on a daily basis that I know that I can do for myself. It's not something that's going to work work for someone else, because I'm not a therapist as such. I'm not a hypnotherapist, and I certainly wasn't thinking about going there. But definitely just having those elements of of hypnotherapy that's going to work for me, and make life easier. Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, the more passionate you become about a subject, if that is something that you want to learn about, and especially learn from someone who's got incredible amount of self knowledge and experience working with clients, and learned it over the years like you have. I mean, this is an absolute blessing. And yeah, I mean, I don't get it. A 30 pound course, I don't, but even if it's something like 200 pounds, I don't think that's going to do anything apart from little digital certificate, which you can put it on a Facebook post or LinkedIn or whatever, and people going, oh, congratulations, it's great, and you're fantastic, and go ahead and think, but it kind of stops there. So just to kind of tie up, if you can, if someone is really either they know a little bit about hypnotherapy, they work with a therapist, maybe they would like to just try it on themselves a little bit, this is like a beginner kind of stuff. Could you recommend like a technique of that people can kind of do it? I mean, this is like super beginner, okay?
So yeah, there's a really good self-hypnosis technique that's been around for quite a long time, and it's brilliant. I tried to meditate for years and couldn't do it, and since I learned hypnosis, I can meditate no problem. And it was thanks in part to this technique. It's called the Betty Erickson self-hypnosis technique. And it's so simple. So I'll explain it right here because it's so simple anybody can sort of do it. And so the way you make it work is obviously you find a safe, comfortable space to sit back or lay back, whatever's comfortable. It's usually easiest to do this one sitting, but you can do it lying down as well. And I certainly do it both ways. And what you do is you look around your immediate environment and with your mind, or say them out loud, you can do it either with your mind or say it out loud. Label 3 things you can see. So I would look around and I would say light, wall, microphone. That's 3 things. Then I got to listen for 3 things that I can hear. I can hear traffic noise. I can hear my son playing a video game downstairs. And I can hear my own voice because I'm talking. Then 3 things that I can touch. So I touch the desk, touch this pen, and I touch this cup of wonderful coffee. So that's 3 things. Then I do 2 of each of those things. 2 things I can see, 2 things I can hear, 2 things I can touch. Then 1 thing I can see, 1 thing I can hear, 1 thing I can touch. Then what I do is I close my eyes and I want to imagine that I'm somewhere really comfortable, really relaxing, somewhere that I love. And so for me, it's always at a beach. I always go. It's the same beach that I actually constructed in my mind, but I constructed it using this technique. And so you can imagine you're anywhere, whether you're in the beach or the forest or whatever. And the best part about this is, even if you're one of the people that feels like you can't picture things with your mind, you can still follow this technique. Just pick the place where you want to be. And then start your labeling, but in this place. And so if I'm at the beach, 3 things I can see. I can see the sea, I can see the sand. And in my imagination, I can always see some beach volleyball going on because I love beach volleyball, love to play. 3 things that I can hear. I can hear the sound of the sea. I can hear people enjoying the seaside. I can usually hear a seagull. Then 3 things that I can touch. And scoop the sand. I let the water run over my feet. Might touch the volleyball. So there we go, 3 things. Then we do 2 of each of those. Then 1 of each of those. And by the time you're finished doing your 3, 2, 1, imagining things that might be happening in your magical place, your mind takes you there in the most wonderful way because you're not forcing it. You're not like really squeeze, I'm going to make this happen. You just go with the technique. And even if your mind doesn't take you there the first time, just doing this technique will give your mind such a focus that you'll still be doing a form of self-hypnosis. And even if you open your eyes straight after this, you will feel calmer and more in control of your thoughts than you did beforehand. But if you practice it a few times, you'll start to find that it's almost like being in a dream. It's like your mind gets so on board with it. It feels so real. Like if you practice this, like even just for 5 minutes over like 2 weeks, 5 minutes a day over 2 weeks, you'll find by the end of 2 weeks, you are, whatever that place is, beach, mountaintop, wherever's relaxing to you, you'll find that you're absolutely there. And you can even set an intention beforehand. So I would like my mind to be clear. I'd like to feel more confident. Set your intention, then start the technique. You'll be amazed by how much your mind creates that intention without you having to do anything else other than go through the technique. So just quickly summarizing, it's look around you for 3 things you can see, listen for 3 things you can hear, touch 3 things you can touch, then 2 things of each and 1 thing of each. Close your eyes, pick your scene, do the same thing. 3 things you can see, 3 things you can hear, 3 things you can touch, 2 of each, 1 of each, and just notice how good it feels.
I really love this because it's something that what you said is it only takes a few minutes, and people have got this misconception about that. Oh, I really need to get ready and do it like an hour, and I'm going to have this and that, and then so then that kind of just the thought freaks you out. But yeah, here we are kind of talking about almost like channeling the thoughts in the most natural and the most easy way that it's just it's just everything is resonating. It's not forced. Everything is fluid. Everything is exactly as life is, as energy. Just letting those that energetic vibrations all over the. I'm not a healer by any means, and I do admire some of the network that I think both know that they're just amazing healers, and they're always talking about these energy blocks and things, but I'm very much resonating with you along the thoughts and the intellectual side of opening channels. Hence astrology, of course, because I'm always starting from astronomy anyway, and it's also, yeah, that is science and mathematics
Yeah.
and things. So it's hardcore science, yeah. Graham, it's been an absolute pleasure to have some of your wisdom shared with us, and yeah, I'm going to put all the links to you and to your website, and just keep creating a lot of buzz in the group, which is, I mean, it's a phenomenal group that you got together, and obviously a lot of enthusiasts there about hypnotherapy, and it's just great. It's just really great to see that you've got that tribe. You already have got that tribe, and that tribe is just going to be expanding. It's wonderful to see that.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure and a privilege to be invited to talk to you today. And you're a fantastic interviewer, by the way.
So thank you for the audience for dipping in and out, in and out, in and out. And next week, maybe not next week, because I'm going to be in an international travel, in an international flight with 2 dogs. So I've got no idea how that's going to go. I'm just going to check my charts just to make sure. But in 2 weeks' time, definitely we are back with another fantastic transformational spiritual episode, and just diving deeper into spiritual entrepreneurship. And in the meanwhile, just reach out, connect, and what Glenn said as well, it's all about community. Just have a chat. So for the rest of the day, take care, everyone. Thank you for listening and watching.